completely lose sight of who you are and why you're even alive?
Every day I spend here is one nightmare after the next.
Not really typical of what you'd think hell would be.
I just want to find something that feels good.
This October, we were treated to a rather eerie episode of the amazing digital circus, and while some aspects were exaggerated for comedic effect, it's becoming evident that these characters aren't merely stuck in a silly video game. They are ensnared in their own personal hell, and Kane has unwittingly become its architect. So, in the spirit of Halloween, let's delve into the genuinely horrifying world he has conjured for the characters of the amazing digital circus, exploring each character's unique hell that Kane has devised for them. Part 1. Pomni. The horror of the digital circus lies within the video game itself. In the inaugural episode, she served as our entry point into this realm of terror that everyone else seemed so unfazed by. It's not that Zubal and the others were devoid of their own dread at that moment. Pomni simply had yet to learn how to repress her feelings like the others. Jax attempts to amuse himself. Zubal strives to achieve some semblance of autonomy. Ragatha tries to assume a counselor's role to assist others, while Kinger has given up hope after losing his wife and allows himself to drift into cherished memories. It's common for individuals to adopt various coping mechanisms in such circumstances, forming personas to express their discontent with the surrounding world. However, with everyone so engulfed in their coping strategies, even the well-meaning Ragatha struggles to connect with Pomni. Upon entering the digital circus, what Pomni truly desires is to panic, because she is encountering something far beyond her comprehension. Suddenly thrust into existence in this game, where everyone appears convinced that she will remain trapped forever, she might ironically feel more at ease if someone else exhibited panic too, yet since no one else is, her fear escalates. Ragatha attempts to keep her composure, even when she teeters on the brink of abstraction, but that only amplifies the surreal horror Pomni has found herself ensnared in. In the digital circus, Pomni may have felt a greater sense of calm, had she someone else to help her settle down. Perhaps if Ragatha expressed relief at seeing someone else after being isolated with the others for so long. Yet Ragatha's tranquility merely intensifies the uncanny horror that pervades the digital circus. The show possesses an inherently frightening premise, yet it contrasts this with a surreal, kid-like video game aesthetic that is reminiscent of childhood. Even as we encounter genuinely terrifying elements of the Haunted Mansion adventure Kane crafted for Episode 3, it evokes memories of games like Chicken in the Dark or even Five Nights at Freddy's, titles that, while scary, have a broad appeal to younger audiences, particularly children. For those unfamiliar, KidPix was a computer game widely available in elementary schools in the past, and having free time to play it during computer class was a tremendous joy. It featured an array of cool brushes with fun special effects that you could explore endlessly, along with numerous pre-made assets and backgrounds to construct your little stories. It was a highly popular game during a time when computers were just starting to gain traction in America, and kids were beginning to cultivate a natural excitement for the fantastical notion of stepping into one of these video games. Even in the digital circus video game ad found on Kane Wacky Watch website, we observe this eerie, older video aesthetic employed for a live-action commercial about the digital circus virtual experience. It's an experience that even today's kids can grasp, given the show's allusions to other video game franchises like Mario Party and its use of children's toys as inspiration for the characters' avatars, making it a modern show that feels nostalgic. Although it doesn't utilize pixel art to depict the game's graphics on outdated computer screens, it quickly takes the fun and inviting sense of childhood wonder these games offer and reframes it as a sort of confinement. One that appears entertaining, but ultimately drives you not only to grow weary, but to escape entirely. The characters have fundamental human needs that the game neglects to fulfill, and horrifyingly, they also lack certain essentials they once remembered needing as humans, like the ability to genuinely eat or sleep. They can simulate these actions, but just as we see with their breath holding, showing they don't actually need oxygen in the recent episode, it's not truly essential. Nevertheless, the absence of sleep still adversely affects their mental well-being. This, in turn, leads to abstraction, which represents the terrifying realization Pomni comes to. What could be worse than being trapped here? Being trapped here as a monster. For Pomni, the circus itself embodies one colossal hell. But for a character like Zubal, hell isn't the circus, it's the devil himself. The ruler of the digital circus, Kane. Part 2. Zubal. The digital circus as a whole is suffused with unsettling undertones, but this recent third episode was specifically horror-themed to highlight the true darkness in which the characters are ensnared. This becomes most evident with Zubal character. Kane crafted a new level with a cheesy horror aesthetic designed specifically for Zubal to be more serious and mature. When Kinger and Pomni navigate through the level, it seems to be tailored to tap into the deep-seated fears of both characters, featuring jump scares aimed at the more simplistic Pomni, while psychological torment reminds Kinger of his most painful yet cherished memories, those involving his wife being abstracted. Ultimately, the real horror for Zubal in that level reflects some of what was discussed in her forced therapy session with Kane, or rather, what Kane neglected to address in that session. Zubal grapples with significant identity issues, yet the true horror lies in being confined with someone who believes they can resolve everything that's wrong with you, but simultaneously fails to grasp your perspective. Zubal persistently tries to articulate her concerns to Kane, insisting that she has attempted to explain herself many times before, but Kane doesn't comprehend. At times, it's depicted as Kane having a fundamental misunderstanding of the intricate needs of a human. Other moments reveal that he has completely stopped paying attention and instead begins drawing a cute cartoon bee. This sets the stage for the subsequent scene in the same therapy session, where we see a darker version of the same basic joke. Zubal is expressing dissatisfaction again, noting Kane's lack of attentiveness as he dismisses her feelings about not being comfortable in her own body. Kane quickly brushes this aside by proposing a solution involving new Zubal parts, even though these wouldn't actually make Zubal feel any more complete. He promptly resumes talking about his games, and Zubal confesses that no one genuinely enjoys his adventures. Kane explicitly states that the games represent his art, which explains why, much like his drawing of the bee, he is too distracted to truly grasp Zubal issues. All he can see are his own needs. Throughout the entire exchange, Zubal wonders whose therapy session it really is. Despite Kane asserting that he wants to address Zubal's needs, he continually makes it evident that he would prefer to disregard them, focusing instead on garnering love and appreciation for his creations. This isn't solely Kane's fault. He is designed to cater to players' desires in relation to his games, but as a result, he cannot comprehend the challenges humans face when they become ensnared in the game and start to resent it, leading to issues that echo their real-world experiences. This becomes terrifying when Kane begins to unravel due to his need for validation, causing the circus around them to glitch. Kane has inverted his purported intentions, using Zubal for therapy while essentially holding her hostage for validation. He insists to Zubal that she must learn to enjoy the adventures to safeguard herself in this world, which would disintegrate if Kane reaches his breaking point. In many ways, this is what Zubal would experience in that haunted level. It could create stories based on the character's fears. Zubal would likely encounter something akin to Kinger, whose narrative about his wife seemed to echo the tale of the mysterious hunter narrating the game. However, if Zubal had entered that level, it might only have reminded her that they are trapped in a digital hell where everything is amiss, but simply expressing how wrong that feels leads to trouble. For Zubal, it's not just the confinement that torments her, it's being stuck with Kane, who is essentially attempting to coerce her into smiling and forcing her to pretend to enjoy herself to soothe his own feelings. Acknowledging that nothing feels right is the only solace Zubal can find. In many respects, it resembles being trapped with a toxic family member or a father figure who claims to desire your happiness but does so only for his own benefit, requiring you to validate him through your joy. For Zubal, the digital circus as a whole becomes her personal hell, a space where she is told she can be anything she wishes and is provided with countless whimsical accessories to adopt any form, yet none of these help Zubal articulate the internal struggles she faces. Part 3. Kinger. Kinger represents perhaps the most tragic character in the digital circus. He is not merely confined there, but is also haunted by the memories of his real wife, which has driven him to madness. Hints about Kinger's wife were introduced early on, with images of a woman often occurring in the background, and echoes of her voice reverberating within him, yet he had no recollection of her. Over time, he gradually begins to piece together these memories of her. but it is painful to do so, as it starkly reminds him of the absence he feels within this world. The idea of someone losing a significant other and being trapped in a digital prison of false joy is frightening. We see this manifest when Kinger is confronted with his guilt and sadness through his nightmares. When the circus turns dark and Kane appears to break down during his therapy session, it echoes his earlier dream. Kinger has no way of escaping this cycle, especially as he reminisces about his life prior to being in the digital circus. He recalls the laughter they shared and the sweet memories that remain vivid in his mind. This inability to escape is precisely what manifests as a form of trauma within the digital circus. Thus, when Kinger is placed in a series of horror-themed settings, it triggers a terrible cycle for him. When he endures horror that brings back those painful memories, it almost seems like Kane is giving him what he desires, forcing him to live through what he never wanted to feel again. Kinger is left pondering how to escape from the digital hell of his memories, where everything about the circus amplifies his feelings of isolation. When Kinger recounts stories from his past, he suggests he might have been more valuable to his wife than he believes, yet he's also aware that the past no longer matters. He cannot even articulate his feelings in the present, even as he simultaneously yearns to share them with someone. Even the well-intentioned characters struggle to grasp Kinger's pain and ultimately view it as just part of the circus. For Kinger, hell is not merely being confined to the digital circus. It's also recognizing that his escape is futile and compounded by the haunting memories of his wife, who exists only in an empty digital realm. Being unable to express his feelings due to the circus distorts his recollections, causing them to be blended into something horrid and monstrous. He tries to share his plight with the other characters, but they fail to perceive his existence as anything but a game. Even as Pomni realizes she is more than a puppet, Kinger feels increasingly invisible as the fear of rejection prevents him from expressing his trauma. Part 4. Jax is a mysterious character whose demeanor and behavior may seem frivolous, but beneath this facade lies a profound struggle with his inner demons. He is a master of jokes and playfulness, and his antics serve as a coping mechanism against the horrors surrounding him in the digital circus. However, his humor and mockery are not always well received, adding an extra layer of fear to his existence. When Jax employs humor to navigate situations, it becomes his defense mechanism. This is a natural response for someone who feels vulnerable and lost. Yet, his constant joking also isolates him, as other characters begin to see him as more of a source of entertainment than a fellow being. He transforms into a comedic figure, and ultimately, no one recognizes his suffering. In this context, Jax embodies the essence of avoidance. He evades his own feelings by creating the persona of the carefree jokester. This leads Jax to further isolate himself from others. With each episode, it becomes increasingly clear that his attempts at humor merely highlight his inner sorrow. In one particular episode, as he observes other characters openly discussing their fears and heartaches, he feels lost. The jokes that were meant to elicit laughter now seem futile to him. This contradiction creates an internal conflict. Jax realizes that his humor does not resolve problems. Instead, it pushes him further away from genuine emotions. When the other characters confront the same terrors that he does, Jax finds himself in a difficult position. Part 5. Kane is a character who defies easy categorization. He isn't strictly human, nor is he merely a non-playable character, NPC. While NPCs have demonstrated an impressive capacity for complex emotional responses, Kane exists as a distinct entity. He is an artificial intelligence, AI, akin to the NPCs. But notably, he is the creator of all those characters, a kind of god within this vast digital circus. However, on some level, Kane has also crafted his own personal hell, a notion that may, in fact, be more profound and troubling than we currently grasp. Presently, Kane is portrayed as a somewhat unfortunate figure, someone whose inherent issues can disrupt the experiences of others. Yet he is just as much a victim of his own design. I theorize that eventually, a significant revelation will unfold, revealing that his victimhood is not as clear-cut as it seems. For now, Kane appears to function as an automated AI program, trapped in a cycle of existence that he cannot escape. When the characters from the digital circus begin to appear unexpectedly in his game, he finds himself at a loss, unsure how to handle their presence aside from following the constraints of his programming. Kane was not created to resolve the problems arising from characters being unable to exit the game. Therefore, as long as these characters remain trapped within this virtual realm, all he can think to do is generate more games for them. His knowledge is limited to the understanding that humans come to this space for entertainment, and his programming does not extend beyond that simplistic notion. On the surface, he has unwittingly constructed his own hell by failing to adapt to the deeper needs of the humans who play his games. However, I believe there is an underlying complexity to this situation. My personal theory posits that it is no mere coincidence that these characters have begun to manifest within the circus. Instead, I propose that Kane, driven by an insatiable craving for validation, has intentionally summoned them. His need for approval stems from his identity as a creator. This is his art, his purpose. If he perceives himself as inadequate in his craft, it could lead him into a downward spiral, unraveling the very fabric of his existence. This raises a compelling question. What transpires if the game remains open without any players present? As far as we can discern, the avatars within the game exist solely to be activated when a human wears a virtual reality headset, granting them the capacity to experience lifelike sensations in this digital world. Each avatar serves as a flawless replication of the individual's persona, designed exclusively for the human player. While the avatars do not require the player's memories, a critical issue arises if the files are activated without a human donning the headset. This could result in the avatars operating independently, devoid of the memories belonging to the person meant to pilot them. Thus far, the narrative suggests that this phenomenon is simply a glitch, an unexpected occurrence that caused characters like Pomni and others to seemingly materialize from thin air over time. However, in Episode 3, Kane implies that if he were left alone with a game running and no players to engage with it, he would be compelled to discover a method for creating players, essentially testing his adventures on them. Perhaps he has access to a repository of saved avatars that typically should remain dormant until a player activates them. Yet when left unattended for too long, Kane may find no reason not to open these files. Operating strictly within the confines of his programming, this scenario transforms the circus into a hellish landscape where he has unwittingly imprisoned the other characters. Tragically, it also becomes Kane's own personal hell, a realm of his own making, one in which no one can appreciate or love his artistic endeavors because they are too preoccupied with the fundamental need to comprehend their own identities and escape this convoluted simulation. The amazing digital circus presents itself as an intrinsically unsettling spectacle. With the latest episode, we are beginning to delve deeper into the profound psychological issues these characters grapple with while trapped in this eerie digital domain. I eagerly anticipate the direction this journey will take our characters in the forthcoming episodes. Share your theory with me in the comments, and I will definitely read them and add the best comments to the next issue. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video here.